What's going on, guys? Matt Schaeffer back here with another Musaic audiophile build for you. This one in a brand new 2023 Bentley Bentayga. This is a Hi-Fi 3 Plus, so let's go ahead and check it out. So as I always start you out with the rear, obviously this one is no different, going with the subwoofer enclosure first. This is a fun one because, again, it's a Bentley, so a lot of exotic materials that we get to use, and obviously a big task to make everything look hidden in OEM. So obviously what you see right there behind the back seats is going to be your subwoofer enclosure. This enclosure is going to feature two 10-inch Focal Utopia M subwoofers. Again, down firing, there's about 3.5 inches of space from the bottom of the sub to the floor. In these cars, this is kind of the same platform as like the Urus, same concept. So down firing in this car measures the best from what we measure before we do a subwoofer enclosure. So the cool thing about doing down firing is you don't have to see any of the subs. So everything is completely hidden and protected. You can still throw plenty of groceries back here, golf clubs, whatever it is. The amplifiers are here underneath this removable panel, which I'll show you here in a few. But looking at some of the design elements, if you look really close, you can see that there is a triangle inset into this lit acrylic. So what you're seeing that looks white here is actually lit acrylic lines. So that's a LED cob strip, bright white, that is illuminating what we rastered on the acrylic. So that's engraved on the acrylic, and that's where everything just lights up. If we look at, let's say, the rear door panel, it's this exact pattern to scale. So we have the black background, we have the engraved triangle, and then where you see the stitch line running down, that's actually going to be the lit acrylic line that you see there in the back. We built like a window box, so essentially that's all one piece layered in there with a bunch of separate individual layers, giving it that really cool deep dimensional look. Obviously we got our Bentley logo there. We have our edition 12. This is a 12-cylinder Bentayga. So if you see on the seats and on the side of the car, it has the edition badging, edition 12 badging everywhere. And then you see this Focal logo here in the center. That's just a bigger version of what you're going to see here in the doors. So it's daytime, so you can't really see it, but this does illuminate. So there's an LED in there that illuminates that. That used to be the name badging from when this car had the name system, right? Because it had the factory name system. We switched everything to Focal, so obviously we're not going to keep the name badging there, and we're going to add the Focal logo. So we essentially created these logos that fit where the name badges fit. Again, you see the edition 12 badging there on the seats. But again, we just took the same design. Same thing with the grille design that you see there. We took that to scale, and that's actually going to be the pass-through down here for air to move. So you can see at the bottom you have that triangle design, and then you have the engraving going in between to match exactly what you see in the lower part of the doors. Of course, we have our random accents of aluminum on the top and the bottom. As you can see there, much like when you look at the dash, you have all of the random aluminum accents everywhere throughout the dash. We have two versions of leather. We have the matching cream leather, and then we have the matching black leather that you can see there. So kind of tough to see up here, but we do have kind of like a pocket ledge here that you could put stuff up there that is wrapped in the matching cream leather on top to give it a nice little contrast. Of course, what you're seeing above this is going to be the factory shade panel. But yeah, and it's kind of tough to see, but there's some body lines here into the cream panel and on the top panel that it's a little difficult to see, but you can kind of see where it contours. The body lines are just accenting the shapes that you see here in the center, much like you see on the dashboard and other places throughout the vehicle. I can actually overlay my drawing in CAD of before I created the subwoofer enclosure, right? So I do kind of like a proof of concept to scale of exactly what I'm going to build, and it's going to have all the individual panels ready to cut on our laser. So I can show you that here in addition with this front enclosure. So with the setup that we did down here, with this specific client, we've done kind of the same in most of his cars. Eurus, same setup. Helix P1, 2 Utopia 10s, Helix V12 DSP amplifier, running all the speakers in the car active. So, you know, based on the efficiency and space that this stuff is taking up, obviously, we're doing all independent amplifiers. You'd have a ton of amps down here, a bunch of cooling, obviously a lot more involved. He generally keeps his stuff pretty simplistic, and like I said, it sounds absolutely awesome within this car. We're actually using a Nav TV OEM amp interface. However, this amp still has to stay fully connected intact to communicate with the factory radio, and that interface installs behind the glove box up front, and it wires into the MOS loop. So essentially I can overlay a picture of what that interface looks like here, but it's going to give us a perfect digital signal from the factory radio. Therefore, our factory radio can communicate with this equipment, send a digital output TOS link directly into the DSP. So we have a perfect signal coming from the factory radio. Of course, we have all our fusing here. Everything's super easy to access and service if need be. And all right, to explain what we got going on the inside of the car, we did the Focal Utopia M three-way speakers in the front. From the factory, you would have had a mid-range here. You would have had the factory 6.5 down here, and then you would have had the tweeter up here, and then of course the factory center there in the center. So when we removed the door card to do the speaker install, essentially fully sound treated behind the door with a combination of hush mat and sound shield acoustic treatment to ensure that there is no resonance within the door panels. Obviously, I told you we modified the speaker grills here. So the face of this speaker grill was actually all chrome before. It actually was way too much chrome from a design standpoint because they use chrome as an accent in this full interior. It's an accent everywhere that you look. There's nothing that's overwhelmingly chrome. So with this, we decided to paint the whole face of that grill black. And it has a chrome backing, but it was like double chrome. So I mean, it was like super bright when you were looking down here at each speaker, and it was just kind of a distraction. Didn't really look good with all the black inside the car. So again, we toned it down. We painted the face of that black on the mid-range and the woofer, and down here we swapped out the 6.5-inch driver with the Focal Utopia M 6-inch. We reinforced again the entire area here. It's nice because, you know, that 6.5 is playing through a enclosure. So again, you get really good mid-bass response out of these door panels here. We didn't want to retain the mid-range down here just because it's literally playing at your feet into the console here. So it's going to give you interference, and it's just making it a lot more difficult to have your soundstage, which is playing here from your most important speaker, and having that soundstage naturally be up here on top of the dashboard. So in this case, we decided to do these really cool looking pillars that really go with the flow of the Bentley interior. If you look at all these different knobs, you have the chrome trim, and then of course you have the black in the center. So that's exactly what we did. We made the aluminum trim around the drivers, and we used the same grille design that you saw at the bottom of the door. Same thing that matches the enclosure in the rear where the pass-through is, and that is gonna again flow in with the factory design perfectly. So when you see these with the rest of the interior, they look very natural. Even some of the body lines that we did here matching the drivers, we did put these a lot more on axis than we typically would, which is very complicated in this case because these A-pillars are leather, right? So wrapping something that contoured in leather, very difficult. I mean, each one of these took me like 4 hours of steaming in order to be able to move that leather. And again, this is like a no grain leather, so it makes it super hard because again, if you try and stretch something with no grain, you're generally going to get wrinkles or fingers that a lot of upholstery guys out there are going to understand that terminology. But yeah, very hard to really wrap something that is, you know, thicker material, and at the same point being able to do it with a zero grain material makes it a huge challenge. But these things look awesome, snap right in. Again, you got your 3.5-inch Utopia M driver here. You got your TBM Utopia M tweeter up here. And again, you can see the other side looks really good. Like I was saying, the factory interface, very simple. Factory radio still works. We have a digital output from the factory radio to our DSP. So I mean, perfect signal, much like we turn this into an aftermarket radio, even though it stays factory. So all the factory interface, buttons, Bluetooth, controls, everything still works 100%. And of course, any DSP that we do, you're gonna have a DSP controller. So this is gonna be that main volume, right? So if we turn this down, you can see the lights go away. And the lights are actually illuminating through smoked acrylic there. So the controller sits underneath that panel, and it's essentially illuminating through the smoked acrylic to make it look like it's a piece of the car. Right next to that area, we did a little key slot, so it fits the Bentley key perfectly. So I can just put that in there. And if you look at the bottom, it has the same grill pattern that we see on the grills up front, the grills on our A-pillars, and the grill on our subwoofer enclosure. So again, I made it to fit the key right there. Before, this was just an open coin tray, right? So it really wasn't usable, but right now we have the armrest. Your hand naturally falls right here on the DSP controller. So again, we can utilize this for main volume. If we're using preset 1, we have 2 presets in this car. If we're using preset 1, we would just keep this volume all the way up to 100. And then from here, we're then utilizing the factory radio in order to control the volume. Factory steering wheel controls to control volume. On preset 2, we essentially are using a HEC higher resolution Bluetooth chip docked directly into the DSP. Now, the benefit with this, while also having the factory amp interface, there's not a lot of sound quality difference between the two, because again, the first one is a digital interface. However, the second one is going to be 0 latency. So if you're going to, you know, a lot of times I like to demo using NPR Tiny Desk concerts and put the phone there on the center of the dashboard, because when you're watching the performance, what you're seeing on the phone is going to correlate perfectly with the soundstage. So if the main singer's singing in the center, that's where you hear his vocal. If there's a guy playing the cello next to him to his right, you know, you would hear him wherever he's standing in relationship to him. If there's a guy playing the electric guitar to his right, then you would hear him right here. And that's just kind of like a proof of concept for how the car is tuned and the soundstage, tonality, all that kind of stuff, separation from the music that you're physically listening back. When you're listening to it through the factory radio, a lot of times there's going to be latency with the Bluetooth chip going from the DSP of, you know, the car to the nav TV interface to our DSP in the back. There's just a lot of links there going through, whereas preset 2 with the HEC BT, you have 0 latency. So again, what that is basically meaning is the audio and video is syncing up perfectly with anything that you're watching, whereas if you're using the factory radio, you'll probably have a latency issue. So that being said, very simple. I mean, you hit this one time, that's now your subwoofer volume, so I can turn it up and down from there. Hit it one more time, that's going to show us what preset we're on. Right now we're on preset 1, which is the OEM radio. And I mean, that's it. Simplicity. It's looks good. It looks like it came from Bentley. With cars like this, obviously they're priced at a premium, but when you buy a car like this, it's still not going to have a great audio system. You know, people are just going to assume that this has a very awesome stereo, and in fact it doesn't. It's the same stuff that you see in like a baseline Audi. If you're buying a factory upgraded system like Name or Harman Kardon or Burmeister, essentially what you're getting is not great physical equipment. It's not the speakers. It's not going to be relevant to the speakers that you put in a home, right? Where it's actually a quality speaker and a quality cabinet. Essentially, these companies are tuning the factory systems in these cars. So they might have a little bit more speakers, which, you know, in turn, the more speakers you have, the more problems with phase you're going to run into in a car. So less is actually more. A lot of companies can have a high output with having little wattage if they put more speakers in. So from a wiring standpoint, weight standpoint, all that kind of stuff, it kind of makes sense for them to do that, but it's not going to really enhance your sound quality. And again, these are all very, very cheap drivers. So you're not getting anywhere your money's worth for what you're physically putting into a factory audio system. Anything aftermarket around the same price point or more is going to absolutely trounce it. But obviously you got to put the pieces in place to make that work. And in a car like this, you got to interface and have the integration to make everything look factory. Because again, you're not going to want a bunch of, you know, random nonsense that doesn't fit the DNA of the vehicle. So it's kind of the lowdown on this system. Again, super simplistic, super easy. If you want to contact me for a job, here is my phone number followed by my email address. These are the two best points of contact for me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you subscribe now. Hit that notification bell, letting you know anytime that we drop a new video. Follow us on TikTok. We drop a lot of videos here of all sorts of stuff. A lot of times, small snippets of these YouTube videos make it out on TikTok before it makes it to YouTube. So if you want to see everything that we do months before you're going to see it on YouTube, make sure you follow us on TikTok. Same thing with Instagram. Here's our 3 handles below. A lot of time we'll post pictures and video snippets of things we're working on in real time. So go ahead and make sure you follow those. Finally, make sure you check out our website, musaicdesign.com. This is going to be the best point of contact to follow the work that we do and see all the information cultivated in one spot. You get to see the YouTube videos, the build logs, every different vehicle that we've built, descriptions of the build, testimonials of customer reactions, stuff like that. So go ahead and check out our website, musaicdesign.com. And like always, guys, I appreciate you guys for following along all these builds. Love the feedback, and until next time.